The cantina saloon doors exploded inward as a towering bay stallion charged into the room. He clamped his teeth onto the bearded man's jacket and dragged him off his bar stool like a mannequin. The whiskey glass shattered on the floor. The man's boots scraped over the sawdust as the horse pulled him toward the street. Outside, the dusty street became an arena, townsfolk scrambling aside as the stallion refused to let go. Sheriff Patrick Moore pushed through the crowd, his hand resting on his revolver, but not drawing.
Hold your fire. Nobody shoot that horse.
The stallion stood stock still in the road, teeth still buried in the jacket, ears pinned flat against his skull. A young woman in mourning black watched from the saloon doorway, her face a mask of shock and dawning comprehension.
This horse ain't crazy. He's pointing a hoof at the man who killed his owner.
The sheriff's jaw set. An animal witness. The law was about to take a strange turn. 3 days before the saloon erupted in chaos, Sheriff Patrick Moore had stood alone in a dusty canyon, staring at death. A broken body lay beneath the blanket. Benjamin Morales, a rancher who knew these trails better than any man.
He didn't fall, Sheriff. Benjamin never walked that ridge on foot. He trusted his horse, not the ground.
The rocks are loose up there, Senora. A misstep, a spooked horse. It happens.
Look at his spurs. Clean. No scuffs from climbing. He was pushed, or he was running from someone.
That evening, a lone bay stallion appeared at the Morales corral, lathered and trembling, saddle empty, eyes wild.
He walked 60 miles home alone. That horse saw something he can't forget.
Later, in his office, the sheriff wrote "accidental death" in his ledger, but sat, staring at the wall, long into the night.
Ben was no careless rider, and that widow is no fool. I am missing something.
At the ranch, Maria knelt before her husband's portrait and made a silent vow. She would not let this be buried as an accident. 2 days after the funeral, Edward Doyle rode up to the Morales ranch, his face set in a mask of neighborly concern.
Senor Doyle, I didn't expect company.
Just wanted to pay my respects, Maria. Ben was a good man. The whole valley will miss him.
From the corral, a guttural snort shattered the quiet. Trueno lunged against the rails, teeth bared, eyes locked on Doyle.
That stallion always did have a mean streak. You ought to put him down before he hurts someone.
He's never like this with anyone else. Only you.
Doyle left abruptly, his horse kicking up dust. Maria stood alone, one hand gripping the hitching post.
Sheriff, my husband's horse tried to tear Edward Doyle apart. He knows something.
A horse's temper ain't evidence, Senora. But I'll ask some questions. Keep him close.
The sheriff saddled his own horse the next morning, riding toward the distant fence line, where Doyle claimed he'd been working. The sheriff found Doyle exactly where he said he'd be, hammer in hand, mending wire along the eastern boundary.
Morning, Sheriff. Caught me doing honest work for once. Something I can help with?
Just checking on folks. Ben Morales died 2 days back, near the canyon. Where were you that afternoon?
Right here, all day. This fence got torn up by last week's storm. My hands saw me. I can give you names.
The sheriff dismounted and ran his fingers along the fresh wire. Tight, new staples, no rust. The work looked genuine.
Alibis clean as fresh snow. But I've seen guilty men build better stories than this.
That evening, the sheriff rode to the Morales ranch with nothing but his conscience and a growing unease.
You found nothing. I see it in your face. But that horse knows, and so do I.
Knowing and proving are different mountains, Senora. I need evidence, not just an animal's hate.
Maria watched him ride away, the stallion's restless whinny echoing from the corral, like a verdict already spoken. 3 days later, Doyle returned to the Morales ranch, not with condolences, but with a folded document and a cold demand.
Your husband owed me $500, Maria. You can settle it by signing over the east water rights.
Benjamin never spoke of any debt. I will not hand over his land to you without proof.
Doyle's gaze hardened, He muttered that Benjamin had promised to meet him at the canyon that afternoon, a claim no one else had heard. Doyle mounted and rode off, the false paper crumpled in his fist. Maria stood still, her heart pounding with sudden clarity. She rode hard for town, Trueno's restless whinny still echoing in her ears like a verdict already given. She burst into the sheriff's office, breathless, and spilled Doyle's words onto his desk like a handful of sharp stones.
He said Ben was going to meet him at the canyon that day. That canyon. He knew exactly where my husband died.
A man mending fences 10 miles away wouldn't know that route. Now I've got a real question for him.
The sheriff pulled a fresh sheet of paper from his drawer and began to write, his pen scratching like a spur dragging through dirt. The sheriff tracked down a young ranch hand who had been working Doyle's eastern line. The same fence Doyle claimed he never left.
You saw Doyle ride toward the canyon, didn't you, son?
The boy swallowed hard and nodded. He'd seen Doyle spurring his horse up the ridge trail around noon, alone. That afternoon, the sheriff found Doyle at the cantina, nursing a whiskey before the wake.
You told me you were fixing fence all day, but a witness says you were riding hard toward the canyon where Ben fell.
What witness? Some lying cowhand trying to get in your good graces.
The sheriff leaned in close, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm.
I don't need your permission to ask questions. Why were you there, Doyle? The truth this time.
I was chasing a stray calf that wandered off. I didn't think it mattered.
The sheriff straightened. A stray calf, miles from Doyle's own land. His story kept shifting, and now he was asking for a lawyer. A town drunk Horace was jailed after he staggered into the saloon waving Benjamin's pocket knife.
That knife isn't yours. Tell me where you got it, or I'll charge you with theft.
The drunk wept. Ben had given him the knife for fixing a bridle the Sunday before his death.
I gave that knife to Ben on our wedding day. Horace fixed my bridle the same week. It's true.
The sheriff unlocked the cell, releasing a sobbing drunk and a dead-end lead.
Doyle is the only one with motive and lies to match, but I need proof.
Trueno paws the ground all night, facing the canyon. That horse sees Benjamin's death every time he closes his eyes.
The wake would gather at the cantina tomorrow. Every eye on Doyle, and every whisper a fuse.
I'll be there, Maria. If he so much as flinches, I'll have him back in this jail.
Maria turned toward the stable door, where the stallion's dark shape stood silhouetted against the lantern light, waiting. The night before the wake, Doyle rode onto the Morales ranch with a storm in his eyes and a coiled rope in his hand.
You've been talking, Maria. That stops. Sign the paper tomorrow at the wake, or I'll make sure you never run cattle on this land again.
You threaten a widow on her own ranch. The whole valley will know by sunrise.
A rope snapped. Trueno burst from the stable, teeth bared, hooves thundering toward Doyle. Maria lunged and grabbed the stallion's halter, muscles straining, whispering his name until he shuddered to a stop a hand's width from Doyle's trembling leg.
He remembers you, Doyle. He'll remember you forever.
Keep that devil off my land, or I'll shoot it.
He fled into the twilight, but the echo of hooves remained, a promise.
He didn't run. He came forward. That horse would kill for Benjamin, just as I would.
The stage was set. Trueno's fury had nearly escaped its leash. Tomorrow at the saloon, there would be no leashes at all. The cantina was jammed with mourners at noon, whiskey glasses clinking hollow toasts to a man who could not answer.
To Ben, the luckiest rancher who ever drew breath. Shame his horse wasn't as lucky.
The sheriff, leaning against the back wall, felt his teeth grind. Doyle's voice carried no sorrow, only the ugly edge of a man daring the room. Outside, Trueno tore at his tether, the rope fraying against the hitching post as his eyes never left the saloon doors. His whinny rose like a war cry above the town's murmur, and inside the cantina, heads began to turn toward the windows.
He's coming.
The rope snapped with a crack like a pistol shot. Hooves hammered the dirt, a bay blur aimed straight for the swinging doors. The swinging doors detonated inward. A 1,000-pound stallion filled the frame, mane streaming, teeth bared against the smoky light. Chairs splintered against the walls as the beast thundered into the room, every man diving for cover. The stallion halted, hooves sliding on sawdust, and his head swung until his wild eyes locked onto Edward Doyle. Trueno lunged, teeth sinking into the leather of Doyle's jacket. Before the man could even flinch, the whiskey glass shattered across the floor. Doyle's boots scraped over the sawdust as the horse dragged him toward the doors. Through the swinging doors, they burst into the dusty street. The stallion's hooves pounding, Doyle's scream swallowed by the crowd's gasp. A hand went for a revolver in the crowd, but the sheriff stepped forward, arms raised, his voice a wall of calm.
Put it away. That horse is doing what I couldn't.
Trueno halted in the road, still gripping the jacket, pawing the dirt with a low, guttural snort that silenced the onlookers.
Don't you see? That horse just named his owner's murderer.
2 deputies pried Doyle from the stallion's grip, cuffing him while Trueno stood trembling, a tear in his eye. The sheriff turned to a young deputy. Fetch Doyle's saddle from the livery. Tear the lining apart if you have to. The deputy nodded and vanished into the livery stable, lantern swinging as he reached for the worn leather. The sheriff stepped into the lantern-lit livery, where Doyle's saddle lay across a sawhorse like a body on a table. He ran his palm along the underside of the leather skirt. A rough seam gave way to a hidden slit in the lining. His fingers met cold metal. He pulled out a gold pocket watch, its crystal cracked but the face still ticking faintly. Prying open the back case, he read the delicate engraving. Para siempre, mi amor. M. Maria's wedding vow to her husband. Then, deeper still, a folded document, stiff with dried sweat. He spread it flat, a water rights transfer, signed Benjamin Morales.
No man works fence all day and carries his neighbor's wedding gift hidden in his gear.
He held the watch up to the lantern, the tiny movement still pulsing like a heart that refused to still. The signature on the document was wrong, too angular. The ink too fresh against the worn paper. Benjamin never wrote that name.
You didn't just rob him of his land, Doyle. You robbed Maria of the last proof of his love.
The stallion's purpose now had a name. Benjamin Morales, hidden in his saddle like a ghost that refused burial. The sheriff walked to the iron-barred cell, the gold watch glinting in his palm like a stolen star.
Found this sewn in your saddle, Doyle. Belongs to a dead man. You want to tell me how it got there?
Doyle's jaw tightened, but he forced a thin smirk through the bars.
He gave it to me weeks ago. A token of friendship. Nothing more.
The sheriff unfolded the water rights document, holding it against the bars so the signature caught the lantern light.
Ben signed that himself. We had a deal. That land is mine by right.
The sheriff didn't flinch. He simply turned to the door and said, "Bring her in."
I gave this to him on our wedding day. He never took it off. Not once. This is not his handwriting. The strokes are wrong. Benjamin's hand was careful. This is forged.
The sheriff folded the evidence. Doyle's lies were now stitched with a widow's tears and a dead man's signature. The sheriff rode out at first light to a bunkhouse where a young ranch hand sat with his head in his hands.
You said you saw Doyle mending fence that day. I know that was a lie. Tell me the truth, son.
The boy broke down, tears cutting through the dust on his face. The words came in a flood. $50, a lie, a man's life. The sheriff wrote it out. A signed confession for bribery, staining the page with the weight of a dead man's name. He rode back to town with the paper in his coat, the ink still fresh as an open wound.
Now Doyle has no alibi. He's left with a forged land deed, a stolen wedding watch, and a man who saw him ride to murder.
The sheriff walked to the jail and held the confession against the bars, where Doyle could read every word. Doyle's face turned the color of cold ash. His knuckles went white around the steel.
You'll never stretch my neck, old man. I'll rot in here before I give you the satisfaction.
The sheriff turned without a word. The heavy iron door clanged shut, echoing down the stone corridor like a verdict already spoken. That night, the sheriff returned to the cell and found Doyle slumped in the corner, his bravado gone.
I am not here to argue, Doyle. The gallows are being built. Only one thing left. Do you die a liar or a man who owned his sins?
You've got nothing but a horse's trick and some trinkets. No jury will convict me.
The sheriff drew out the gold watch, its face still ticking softly, and held it up.
This isn't a trick. It's Benjamin's heartbeat. Think on it. Let it ask you what you are afraid to answer.
He set the watch on the cold stone floor, just beyond the bars, its rhythm filling the silence. Doyle stared, his hands trembling against the cot's wooden edge.
That's Maria's voice you hear. She'll never stop loving him. You can't kill that.
The sheriff turned and left, his boots echoing down the stone corridor. Doyle remained motionless, listening to the tick of a dead man's love, until it became the only sound in the world. Maria walked into the jail, her black dress blending with the shadows of the stone corridor.
You loved my husband's land more than you hated him, didn't you, Senor Doyle? That is the truth that eats you.
He wouldn't sell. I had no choice. The river was dying, and he had the only spring.
His voice cracked, the words escaping like steam from a split boiler.
There is always a choice. Even Trueno knew that. He watched you, and he never forgot.
Doyle's head dropped, a single sob breaking through his clenched teeth.
I didn't know the damn horse was watching. He just stood there, looking at me.
That's enough, Doyle. You just confessed to murder.
The sheriff gestured to his deputy and produced a formal statement. Doyle signed it with a trembling hand. Maria turned away, her weeping silent as the jail door groaned shut. The sheriff sat across from Doyle, a fresh sheet of paper between them, inkwell uncapped.
I met him on the East Ridge, told him I'd pay double for his spring rights. He laughed at me. When he turned to leave, I saw the pocket watch chain. Something broke inside me. I pushed him. He didn't scream, just fell. I looked up, and that horse was standing there, staring at me like I'd killed God.
And Trueno never bolted. He just watched you?
Not then. He stood like a statue. I figured he'd run off later, but that devil followed me for miles.
Maria stood in the doorway, a fist pressed to her mouth, tears slipping silently. The sheriff wrote without pause, his hand steady, each line a nail in Doyle's coffin.
Sign it.
The ink dried. The room fell silent, save for the faint ticking of a watch that had witnessed everything. Word of Doyle's confession spread through town like a flash flood, carrying the name of a horse on every tongue. By noon, a crowd gathered at the Morales Corral, children clinging to the rails, watching the bay stallion who had unmasked a killer.
He was Benjamin's most loyal friend. He did what none of us could.
That stallion is the finest witness I ever had. Didn't need a badge or a Bible, just a memory.
The circuit judge arrived on the noon stage and set the trial for the following Monday, a formality everyone knew. Doyle sat in his cell, the gold watch still lying beyond the bars, its ticking the only visitor that didn't come to gloat. That evening, Maria sat on the porch with the sheriff, the weight of the coming days heavy, but no longer crushing.
After the trial, that land is yours clear and free, and that horse deserves a paddock of his own.
The sun set over the Morales ranch, painting the white fences gold, the stallion's silhouette standing sentinel over a land that would never be stolen. Trueno's name would be printed in newspapers from Santa Fe to St. Louis. The horse who brought a murderer to justice. The courtroom filled before sunrise, every bench creaking under the weight of the valley's judgment.
I gave him that watch on our wedding day. Edward Doyle took it from his body. He took everything, but he couldn't silence Trueno. That horse spoke for my husband when I had no words left.
Doyle sat rigid, his face a mask of stone that cracked only when his own lawyer refused to meet his eyes. The sheriff laid the watch and forged document before the jury, each piece a silent accusation. The jury, ranchers who knew the scent of dry grass and honest sweat, returned in less than an hour. The foreman stood, voice steady. Guilty of murder in the first degree. The judge adjusted his spectacles, his words dropping like a hammer on a coffin lid. Edward Doyle, you will hang by the neck until dead. May God have mercy on your soul. The gavel fell. The air left the room, and Doyle's knees buckled as the deputies caught him. Carpenters worked through the night, the rhythm of hammers tolling like a funeral drum. In his cell, Doyle scratched a letter to a son who had long stopped answering. I let the river dry up and his blood wet the stones. I am sorry, boy. The paper trembled in his hand, ink blotted with something thicker than sweat. The sheriff appeared at the bars, lantern in hand, his face older than it had been a week ago.
Sunrise, Doyle, make your peace.
Doyle said nothing. He folded the letter and passed it through the bars without a word. In the chapel, Maria knelt before the altar, Trueno's soft whinny drifting through the open door like a psalm. Outside, the gallows stood stark against the graying sky, the noose already swaying. The square began to fill with silent faces, none daring to look directly at the platform. The first pale light touched the rope, turning it gold, a brief mercy before justice would arrive. The jail door groaned open, and Doyle stepped into the dawn, hands bound, boots dragging. The crowd parted like a mute tide, their breath held as one. On the platform, Doyle's eyes searched the sea of faces and found Maria, a stallion's head high above the rest behind her. He looked away. The sheriff gave a single nod. The trap door banged open, and the rope snapped taut with a brutal finality. A collective gasp, then silence, heavy as stone.
For Benjamin.
She did not look away. Her tears carved clean lines through the dust on her face. Trueno stood like a statue, ears pricked forward, watching the platform with a stillness that spoke louder than any words. The sun climbed higher, the noose casting a long shadow, and the valley exhaled the poison it had carried too long. The morning after the hanging, Maria walked to Benjamin's grave with Trueno beside her, his nose pressing softly against her shoulder.
We did it, mi amor. He can rest now, and so can we.
She took the pocket watch from her dress and hung it on the cross, its gentle tick filling the silence. The ranch sign at the entrance was repainted that week. Morales Ranch, bold and clean, with a horse's silhouette beneath. Months passed, the land greened, the water ran clear, and Maria rode Trueno bareback through the pastures, his halter her only guide. He wore no bit, never again, only a soft halter. A free horse who had earned his freedom. In his private paddock, Trueno would stand at the fence, watching the canyon where Benjamin fell, as if guarding a memory.
He still looks that way every sunset. I think he always will.
The sheriff came by often, not for duty, but to sit on the porch with Maria and watch the sunset paint the stallion gold. The Morales Ranch endured, not because of land or water, but because a horse had remembered and a woman had believed him. The years gentled Trueno's coat to silver, until one autumn evening he lay down in his paddock and closed his eyes for the last time. Maria found him at sunrise, his great chest still, and she knelt in the straw without a sound. Ranch hands dug a grave at Benjamin's feet, the earth soft from years of rain on the hillside. They lowered him with canvas straps, and Maria placed a small cross at the head. 3 crosses now, side by side.
I kept my promise, Ben. He's with you now.
The paddock stood empty that winter, frost on the fence rails, but the sign at the gate still read Morales Ranch in bold letters. He never spoke a word, but he saw everything, and that was enough. The sun rose, the water ran clear, and the legend of Trueno, the horse who witnessed murder, lived on in the valley. The Morales Ranch endured not in spite of loss, but because a woman and a horse had refused to forget. The wind carries his name still, across the canyon and through the grass, where a bay stallion once stood witness.